Welcome everyone back to Angela's Craft Room. Today I'm bringing you another mail card. Just seem to be doing a few mail cards lately. This one I've used the new stamp set One Wild Ride with the lovely motorbike there as the centre focus of my card. This is the new stamp set that's available. It's called One Wild Ride. Now today we're going to be using the motorbike obviously and the tyre tread, this little blotchy stamp and the badge, and we're also going to use the sentiment "Hope today is one wild ride." So it's a really good mail stamp set to have. I'll have the links to my store below this tutorial, and I'd love to hear from you if you're interested in becoming one of my customers. If you live in Australia, I'm more than happy to help you or answer any of your questions. So just always look at the bottom of my tutorials. I always have all the links there at the end of each tutorial. So let's get started on this lovely mail card. Okay, so to start with, I'm going with Night of Navy. So you'll need, that's your card base, which is 11 inches long by 4 1/4, and then we've scored at 5 1/2 inches, which we will burnish that. Fold it in half. Fold that one in half. It's a nice burnish crisp edge. Then what we need is from the, just pop that up there, but from the Serene Scenery DSP paper stack, you'll need, that's just the DSP that I've used. It's entirely up to you what you want to use. I've used from the Serene Scenery, and this one measures 5 1/4 by 4 inches. Now you I just have to decide which way I want it, but I think I'll have it that way. Also I'm going to be using some burlap ribbon just to add some more dimension to my card. So this has to be applied down the side here on my card before I adhere this piece to my base card. So with the burlap ribbon, you will need to put tear and tape on the back of it because it's a very thick, coarse ribbon. I know I normally tell you that I don't put any tape directly on the ribbon because it shows bulges, and that is still true, but it's just with the burlap ribbon I always do, and I just pull it hard. That is just how thick it is. So I'm just going to apply this down one side and then let it fold itself around the back. So just making sure I'm equal. So as soon as it touches that, it's going to adhere because the tear and tape is just so strong. And we're only adhering it to the designer series paper. So the next step is you need a piece of I'm using Night of Navy. Now also what I'm showing you on this card is just layering your front piece, and that's what's on my card here. That is why I've got all these pieces under here and coming up here, and that's what's made it looks like it's popping off the card, because I've just got so much layers on the card. So I wanted to show you that as well. I mean, you can just put it flat on the card if you want. So I'm just going to be adhering that with some down this side where it's going to be touching the burlap ribbon. I'm actually going to just grab some tear and tape, because nothing will attach to that burlap ribbon except for tear and tape. The rest you can just put snail or multi-purpose liquid glue, whichever you like. But that side that's going to be touching the burlap ribbon, you would need to have some tear and tape. So I'm just going to put the snail down, and you're not really going to see much of this piece, but if you are doing a lot of layers on the card, it is essential that you just have this. So I'm just going to set this down about there. So you can see this side where it's hitting the burlap ribbon, I've got the tear and tape on there. Now that is 4 1/4 by 3 inches, I think I told you. So the card base was 11 inches by 4 1/4, and then scored at 5 1/2. Then the DSP, which we've got here, is 5 1/4 inches by 4 inches. Then I've applied a Night of Navy piece, which is 4 1/4 by 3 inches. Then I'm going to bring in, just as another layer, and you'll find you've got lots of scraps lying around your craft room, I'm sure, like I do, and I find this is a great way to use them up. This is Whisper White, which is 4 1/2 inches by 3 inches, and that's just going to go on there as another layer. But when I put it on, I just letting you see that there's just a little bit of blue up there. And what I might do, I have got a couple of little bits of burlap. Before I put that white piece down, what I'm going to do is, just for a little bit of, you don't have to do this, but just for a bit of extra layering on my card, I'm just going to put that piece up there. And I've got another little piece here, and I'm just going to put that down the bottom, just off to the side. And I had tear and tape already on those, so it just adds a bit of dimension. So we'll go ahead and put, just see where I want that to be. You just want your burlap ribbon showing, but you also want your blue showing a little bit as well. So I've got burlap ribbon on a little bit of this, so I think to be safe, I'm just going to put, because I don't want it not sticking when it's touching the burlap ribbon. So I'm just going to put a piece on that side. Now it's going to touch the burlap ribbon a bit at the top and bottom. So I might just And I mean, if you're not going to use the burlap ribbon, you don't have to have the tearing tape. It's just, I know by experience, if I don't use the tearing tape on the burlap ribbon, it's just not going to stick because it's such a coarse ribbon. So we just pull those off. And it doesn't take, it only takes a little bit longer just to get that on there. So on the other pieces that we're putting on top of here, I should be able to get away with just putting snail on. And you know, if you've got scraps, it's always good to, another thing is when you're creating a card, if you're not quite sure what you want to do, is just get a scrap of paper and just use whatever stamp set you're using. Just have a practice of what colours you think are going to look best, because that's what I did with this top piece here. I had a scrap piece and I just did a few things on it, and then before I stamped the motorbike, just to see which colour scheme. I had two different colour schemes and I just wasn't sure which one that would look the best. So now we're just going to put this on, and we don't, because it's got tearing tape, I know I don't have to worry about where it's going to hit the burlap ribbon, because it's just going to adhere to it. So we'll just pop that down there, so it's showing, it's going to show the burlap ribbon, and it's also going to show a little bit of that blue underneath, like there. So then my top two layers is Night of Navy, which is 4 inches by 2 3/4, and then I've got a piece of Whisper White, which is the piece we're going to be stamping on, which is 2.5 inches by 3 3/4 inches. Okay, so I'm just going to stick that straight on there, straight, like that. And you've noticed I haven't put it actually on the card yet. When I'm doing a lot of layers, I like to just work on my front piece first, and then I just put it onto the card last. You just treat this like it's your canvas. So then that, I think I will put on to my card. Now, because I've got that burlap ribbon there, I'm just going to put a little bit of tearing tape over it. Sorry if I go out of camera shot, but I am trying to watch the camera as well as do this for you. Hopefully that's like, so it's got a little bit of tearing tape over the burlap, so I know it's going to stick. Then I'm just going to get my tearing tape and go in between there, on there, and I want to put a fair bit of adhesive on here because I do have a lot of layers on here and I really want it to stick. So I'm just going to line that up with my any grid line at all. You can use whatever you use to line yours up with, and I'm just going to place that down as evenly as I possibly can. Then I'm just going to turn it over and give it a really good rub because it does have a lot of layers, but I really wanted to show you how to achieve a really layered card look by using designer series paper. In this case, the ribbon and also cardstock. So it's a way of using up. So now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to do our piece that's going to go on the front there. So to do that, we'll put our card base aside and we're just working on this little piece, which is 3 3/4 by 2.5 inches. Now to start with, I'm going to be doing a lot of stamping off, so I'm going to make a mess. I'm using the tread image and I'm just patting it along. Now I'm going to stamp off once, twice, and then I'm going to go along the bottom of the card. Then I just found that full strength and even by just stamping off once was too dark for what I wanted to achieve. And don't worry if that goes up a little bit higher like that. You can always go over it, which I intend to do. So then we're going to turn it round and do, I'm not worried about that being a little bit higher because I'm going to put a sentiment down there. And this is just the top piece. So my ink pad's quite juicy, so that's why I'm having to stamp off a couple of times. Just okay, so just clean that off with my stamping scrub. And if you're wondering how I clean my stamps, I have done a tutorial on it, but this is the stamping scrub, and in one corner will be raindrops and in the other corner you will find there is a sun. It's the one where the raindrops are, that's where you spray your stamping up cleaner, stamping mist, over on that side, and then you dry your stamp on this side, and your stamps will last an awful lot longer if you do look after your stamps. So we've finished with that one. So then we're going to use pumpkin pie, and we're going to use the speckled stamp. Now I'm going to stamp off on this one as well. So I'm just going to go in each corner. Just depending what strength of colour that you want. Now you can see that I'm not re-stamping, I'm just literally going over it. That's all I want there with the speckled. So then decide which side I want the bottom. We'll just close off that pumpkin pie because we're finished with that. Now I might use the more darker image, I think, down the bottom. Now we're going to stamp with cherry cobbler. We're going to stamp our motorbike. Trying to think of what I'm doing. So just make sure you've got a really juicy, because there's a lot of deep impressions in this stamp, and it will do all the work for you. So I'm just going to line that up. So I'm quite happy with the coverage. So I'm just going to go about there. Now I need to, without trying to rock it, just firmly hold it down so that all those impressions on that stamp transfer to this piece. Beautiful. I love this stamp. It's a fantastic mail card stamp set, this one. So then we're finished with the cherry cobbler for the moment. And then we're going to, I'm just going to sponge a little bit using old olive. So what I'm going to do is just bring in my old olive, and it's a Stampin' Up sponge which comes in a lot bigger piece than that, and I just cut them in 4. I just squeeze them together, and then when you're finished with it, just rinse it under the tap and then just leave it somewhere to dry, and you can use it heaps of times. So straight into there, and I'm just going to start with just sponge down the edges, which I suppose you need a lot more down here because it's quite dark down this end. But what I was going to say was you could use a dauber on the end of your finger, but in this instance I just think I've got more control by just doing it with the sponge. Now I'm just doing it a bit stronger down here because I've stamped that quite dark at the bottom. So then we're going to turn it round so we've got control of where we want the sponge to be. Just hold it underneath as close to the edge as you can, and then your card's not going to flip around a lot. So we'll just go along the top, and this is just going to add a little bit more interest to your image once it goes onto your card that we've put quite a few layers on. And it's not a hard card, it's just a matter of knowing how to layer your card. It makes a lot of difference than just stamping the image on the flat surface. Now I'm just doing the sides once again, and this time when I have hardly got any ink left, I'm coming onto the cardstock a bit, so you can, hopefully you can see that I'm coming onto the cardstock so that that vintagey look's going to be coming over onto the white to take away a lot of the white, because we don't want it to be stark white. So now I'm not re-inking. What I'm going to do now is just in circular motions go around my motorbike, and it will have different tones of colour around it. Where I first started, it's going to be quite greener over this side, but you can just go over it and it will tone down. But I haven't re-inked that at all. I don't want to take away from the motorbike. Okay, so we're finished with that. So now what we're going to do is put this onto our front of our card with some dimensionals. So I'm going to put one in each corner. You will need one in each corner at least. And then I like to put one in the middle. You don't have to put as many as I've put. That's entirely up to you. Now we just need to take off that film. Just push down in the middle, as I've told you heaps of times, and it does help lift that film to come off a lot easier for you. So I think I've just got that one there to go. It's hard to know sometimes. I miss that one in the corner there. That one just has to come off. So then that is just going to go onto your card, and it's going to lift, it's going to pop off your card with all those layers underneath. It's just going to really pop off your card like that. Okay, now also what I've put on my card is, I said we were going to use this sentiment, hope today is one wild ride. So I've just used scrap piece of Very Vanilla and a scrap piece of Night of Navy, and what I did was just stamped in soft suede on the Very Vanilla, and then I've just adhered that with some snail to a scrap piece of Night of Navy. Now I'm just going to, you guessed it, more dimensionals. So it's just wide enough that I don't have to cut the dimensionals, thank goodness. Because we don't want to see the dimensionals on the other side. And we're just going to add this sentiment just underneath the motorbike. Now you could have it so it's like hanging off a little bit, but I won't this time because I have dimensionals underneath there, so I don't want a dimensional just hanging off the side. So then we've got our little sentiment, which is popping up even further. And then the other thing I've done is on some Very Vanilla, I've stamped the badge, and then I've punched it out using the new badge punch from Stamping Up. It's an Unreal one. And another thing, just a tip, what you can use this for is a bird cage. If you look at it like that, you could actually punch out, have a bird cage and some rhinestones coming up. Maybe a card I can do at a later stage, but that is another way that you can use the badge punch. So this is what I've stamped in Cherry Cobbler on Very Vanilla and used the badge punch to punch it out. Now I want that to sit there on my card, so you sort of have to work out where you want your adhesive, and you're just going to use some snail because some of the badge is going to be sitting off of the card, so you don't want, I would have it sitting about there. You don't want it covering. So let's put my finger there. And my snail, where has that disappeared to? So we want it down. I'm just really putting a fair bit on because it's only going to be getting held on by one side. So that should be alright. So we're just going to pop it just above the motorbike. So it just adds even further dimension to your card. And I'll just remove that so you can see the nice clean card. So that's the card we've made today using the stamp set One Wild Ride. So I hope that you'll give it a try. I think it's a stamp set that's going to be very popular for mail cards, and this is just one way that you could make a card with it. So thank you once again for joining me for one of my tutorials, and I really look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.